Welcome back to the After Party. Unless you've been living under a rock, you know the verdict is in on the Diddy case. And today we're unpacking all of it with the one and only attorney, Heather Nicole Johnson. Now, y'all asked for clarity, so we had to bring our expert back in the building. Heather, how you doing?
I'm great, Montana.
Awesome. Now, a lot has happened since you were here last. The prosecution was putting on their case. They rested. The defense didn't bring any witnesses. And the verdict is in. Now, we're going to get to the verdict. But when you were here last, you were talking about the federal government's success rate. And I want to know, does this hurt their success rate, the verdict? And what do you think about Sean Diddy's legal team or Sean Combs' legal team?
Well, from a judicial standpoint, I'll address his legal team first. I will say they did their job. If they were able to obtain the verdict that they were seeking, then mission accomplished. Whether or not you agree with the verdict is a different question, but from a legal standpoint, they were able to poke holes in the prosecution's case, which is what they were hired to do. So ultimately, as I heard a commentator say earlier when this verdict first was rendered, that Diddy knew how to pick talent, and he also knows how to pick a legal team, because, I mean, his lawyers were pretty incredible in terms of getting the job done. However, from the federal, the United States government side, yes, the Southern District of New York, which is the jurisdiction that this case was in, that he was being prosecuted in, they do have a very, very high conviction rate of over 90%. But I don't think it necessarily hurts them because, or the outcome necessarily hurts them, because the verdict, there were still two guilty counts: the trafficking of Cassie and the
No, not the trafficking, the
I'm sorry,
prostitution.
The prostitution of Cassie and Jane Doe. So it wasn't a complete wash. So with that, however, I will say that because of the outcome for the federal government, they are now under probably a little bit more criticism and scrutiny than they probably have been in a while, because some people believe from the onset, a lot of legal experts believe from the onset, that this case was overcharged. We had a video of Cassie being abused in the hallway, being assaulted in the hallway. Although that video, technically is what, broke the dam wide open, he's never really there's been no accountability for what we saw on that video. There's been no charge.
Okay, but let me ask you this, because even with that video, and how does that video support trafficking and racketeering? It supports abuse, but he wasn't, like you said, he wasn't charged for that. So,
and that's exactly why that this case has been under such scrutiny from the beginning, because the RICO charge, the fact that this video was being used to help build this case, but no one could really understand where exactly it fit in, because there were no formal charges for what we saw in the video. They did not pursue the actions from the video. They did not pursue that in state court where they could have. So, there's just a lot of questions that a lot of legal experts, both from, prosecutorial backgrounds as well as defense backgrounds, a lot of questions that people have.
Now, the verdict in Sean Combs' trial has sparked a mix of reactions, with some celebrating his acquittal on major charges and others expressing disappointment. Now, while found not guilty on racketeering and sex trafficking charges, he was convicted on 2 counts of transportation for purposes of prostitution. And this mixed outcome has led to both jubilation and criticism. So let's get to the top. What exactly does it mean legally for these verdicts for him? Because like we said, they didn't get the major charges, which was the trafficking and the RICO.
So that was huge for him. in terms of victory. I believe that hours later we were shown a rendering of him on his knees in the courtroom, thanking God for the verdict once it was read. So he knew or understood the gravity of the jury's verdict of finding him not guilty.
Was anything about the decision like surprising to you though?
Honestly, the last time we were here, I did mention that I didn't think it was going to be a slam dunk. The tension in this case, you've got celebrity, you've got race, you've got sexuality, you've got money, you've got all of these things that are mixed together in a pot. You're never going to just get a clean black and white outcome. Unfortunately, that's just not the world we live in anymore. So these days, people are about at least the presentation of accountability. We live in a cancel culture where people try to hold people accountable in their own ways outside of the criminal justice system. So, I can't say that I was surprised, to answer your original question, because I just knew that there were too many irons in the fire, too many things from a conscious and subconscious level for a juror. As I mentioned the last time, Diddy and Mace were part of my college soundtrack. Now, I'm giving away my age, but at the same time, when you have those kinds of people who've played these background roles at different times and stages of your life, and then, you grow up, you become an adult, they grow up, they start doing things, and the next thing you know, you're on this jury. What could you possibly, how unbiased could you possibly be? I mean, it's hard. It's really hard because he was so famous and so well known.
Now, one of the jurors, and we did talk about this before, has gone on a CNN show, I think, and, talked about his experience of being a juror. He was a alternate juror, I think. And he took offense to anyone saying that they couldn't be unbiased, because he said he knew nothing of Puffy. He never listened to his music. He was not he wasn't aware of anything that he was doing in his life to have an opinion other than what was presented in court. So you don't believe that?
I do believe it. I do believe it. However, every single person walking around this earth has biases. We all have them, conscious and subconscious or unconscious. You meet me, we all do that 5-second head to toe scan. We don't even realize we're doing it. So you can't, it's a hard sell for me to think that we do that every day without realizing it, 24 hours a day. But now I'm going to walk in a courtroom and suddenly all bets are off. I have no outside thoughts. I just don't buy that. And again, let me just talk about the intentionality. No, you do want to go in there open and unbiased. But as a human being, it's just impossible.
Okay, so let me ask you this. What do you think was the most damaging element in the prosecution's case? And please, again, do not say nothing about that video, because the video has nothing to do with, in my case, like what besides the video, what did they have?
They had a willing witness, a willing star witness. They had a settlement that had already been paid out. They had more willing and able-bodied witnesses, regardless of their motive being genuine or being, or an attempt to be in compliance with a subpoena or whatever it may be. I mean, they had the witnesses to help them tell the story. But then at that point, yes, willingness is one thing, but credibility is another. So, you've got an 8-month pregnant woman sitting on the witness stand. That's your star witness, and I'm referring to Cassie. She's sitting there. She's telling her story. I'm sure she cried. She's a very, nice-looking lady, and the age difference, the dreams that she had, the reason that they even met to begin with. I mean, there's just so many moving parts that that allow a juror to see themselves, that make her human, that humanized her story, that humanized what happened to her, that humanized what he did to her. So those are all things people think, when you're in court, yes, the law, the rules, evidence, all of that matters. But there's still a human element that has to be touched on or reached in order for you to get the kind of verdicts that you're looking for as a prosecutor.
Do you think it would be the same verdict if he wasn't a celebrity?
Well, I don't think this case would have gotten this far if he wasn't a celebrity.
Right. So this wouldn't happen with Pookie in West Dallas.
No.
Why?
Well, for starters, no one's suing him for $30 million in West Dallas for any reason. I'm not no knock to West Dallas, but I'm saying with your scenario. So then number one, that allows him to stay under the radar. That's what caught their attention.
Because there are so many women who wish that they could get, some kind of justice for,
And that's understandable. Even as an attorney, I've been, fighting and alongside those women in those kinds of situations where, they're facing emotional abuse, financial abuse. And these are things that leave scars that we cannot see. That's the part that I think, especially in our community, that's so heavy with these kinds of cases because, it's almost like, well, did you die? Did you bleed? Right. That's an inside joke that we have, but that's not the only way to abuse someone. And I think that, we're now getting to a point as a community where we're able to see that abuse comes in different forms. And it's not always going to be, the person who's abusing you is not always going to be held accountable in the way that you would want them to, because abuse is perceived differently depending on the circumstances in the situation.
Right.
And more importantly, but unfortunately, the victim.
Right.
Who the victim is makes a huge difference. Unfortunately.
I think the same. And I think that was what this case was about as well. It's, did you see Cassie as a victim or not, is what the jurors had to,
Well, that's why I went back to describing what she appeared like at court on the stand, being 8 months pregnant, giving her, that's.
But yeah, Heather, that's her appearance. But then when the cross-examination and you started looking at text messages where she was also seemingly a willing participant over the course of a 10-year span.
I understand. And the tension there is very clear to me in terms of why it would be, questionable. But the issue or the human element to this story is what the prosecution used. You can say, yeah, but Heather, but she's sitting there literally with a baby in her belly. If that doesn't buy credibility.
To what?
Well, it humanizes her more. I'm not saying it makes her necessarily more believable. I'm just saying it humanizes her more.
That she was on a FaceTime video doing an intimate moment with Sean Combs, with her boyfriend, her now husband. So it's like, yeah, she's got a baby in her belly, but we also have a picture as well, based on the testimony, of what kind of woman she could be.
And I think ultimately that's why you may have seen the other not guilty findings or a verdict. I keep saying rulings. This wasn't a bench trial, but the other not guilty verdicts from the other charges,
right,
that could have played a part, because the prostitution charge dealt more so. For example, If you are a man living in New York, in the state of New York, and let's just say you're going through a divorce. That's the world I'm in. You're going through a divorce and you decide that you want to have fun tonight. And you pay for a young woman to come from New Jersey to come see you in New York. You just pay for her Uber.
Right.
Her Uber could be $30.
So,
And do you know you would be guilty of sex trafficking?
so that's what I'm asking you.
Yes.
So can Pookie, can we then?
But they're not looking for him. That's the difference. They're not, he's not going to make or break a prosecutor or district attorney's career taking him on. That's not a big fish.
I'm trying to help the ladies out. I really am. I think that really is so unfair. I mean, really, because there are so many quote unquote Cassies who are victims.
But okay, and to your point, but what enterprise would Pookie be running? Potentially.
Because there are some Pookies who are some Nino Browns out here. That's their enterprise. They're doing some, and it's funny because like these guys who, that I'm referring to, know they don't have Diddy money, but they not no broke dudes either.
Right.
So why are these women not able to seek justice in those situations? Is so unfair to me.
Oh, I completely understand and agree. It's just a reflection of the times we're living in. I mean, that's not a shiny object like a celebrity trial is or a celebrity defendant. It's not as shiny. It's not as, gratifying to rope that big fish in and get him charged and have them stand trial. That's not as, and it's unfortunate, but generally, I'm not accusing or labeling any specific a district attorney or jurisdiction, but I do think it's fair for us to just come out and say it. A lot of times in these types of cases, you have district attorneys who are building their careers. Mm-hmm. They are making names for themselves. They're wanting to be that top cop, get reelected, show that they're not afraid. They're not fearing the big guys. They're not fearing the big fish. That's part of it. So until we're willing to accept that, I think these kinds of cases may continue to get under our skin because we know on a smaller scale that this is happening. But the system, like the old people say, it's the system. The system. It's just how it was designed.
Man.
Because can you go and campaign on arresting Pookie from West Dallas as to why you should be reelected as the DA, even though, to be fair, let me be very clear. In this case, this is a federal case.
Okay.
So there's no electing of a DA.
Okay.
But I'm just giving you the overview of what gets people in these kinds of situations judicially. And even from a PR standpoint, too. Because it's all interconnected in the world of celebrity. It's all interconnected. I
don't know. I just feel like a community activist, somebody should. I mean, because like I said, there are sex crimes that are going on right here, right under your nose, and they're skipping in the tulips.
But are they sex crimes involving millions of dollars and millions of, or these elaborate, lavish trips and gifts and salacious, evenings? And probably not. That's the point.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm sorry.
No,
ladies.
I agree. It's unfortunate.
Womp, womp,
but you got to tell why. The real reason. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, we are waiting on sentencing. Do you know what's actually on the table for Diddy?
Well, I know. Okay. So with him being convicted of the Mann Act, there is, and that's ultimately what the two prostitution charges are.
Which... I don't mean to cut you off. The Mann Act. Now, I heard that was created really for like mobsters.
It was created over 100 years ago. Okay. And this act was literally designed to help get rid of prostitution or to stop it. And as we can see, I mean, prostitution is the oldest profession on earth. and it's never going away. It's never going to, I don't know what other deterrents they're looking for. But with that, though, it was designed to help eliminate prostitution. As we can see, it did not. But because it's such an old law, there is no sentencing minimum. So this judge has a lot more wiggle room in terms of what he can and cannot administer as Diddy's sentence.
Like, what do you mean?
He could say, you're going home and, have a great night. Good luck to you. Or he could say, and I'm not sure about the maximum, but let's just say the max, because I do think there is a maximum, but I just know that there is not a minimum.
I think it's 10 years.
10 years. Okay. So
charge.
There we go. Yes. So he could easily go home. I think we had talked about it off camera for time served. That's always, something that is up to the judge's discretion. But again, the judge has a tad bit of pressure in these types of situations because people are watching. We live in a world, unfortunately, where even the judges are being scrutinized from a political standpoint. So I think a lot of the judges right now, in federal courts are crossing all their T's and dotting all their I's. So it will be very interesting to see how this or what the punishment is decided for this, because I'm curious.
Yeah, what kind of arguments do you think his lawyers could make to soften the outcome?
They could talk about, his likelihood of not reoffending, the fact that they don't believe he's a danger to the community. They could also talk about any charity or, good that he's done with his celebrity, donations, supporting people financially, things of that nature. The fact that he's a father of those kids. He has younger kids as well. I think his little girl just turned 3 or 4. Love Combs. So there's a lot that they can work with there. It's just going to be up to the judge as to what he wants to, use and consider and say, okay, then because of this or these things, I will only sentence you to X, Y, and Z.
Now, realistically, do you think he's going to avoid prison time?
If he doesn't, it would only be to send a message, because that's something that a lot of times we will see in these high-profile cases. Judges will, especially considering how he disregarded the court's orders previously, and that was an affront to the judge,
right,
to contact what was
witnesses.
But there was one in particular, the young lady from
Gina. Was it not Gina? Mia. What was her name?
She's the one from the group Dirty Money.
Dawn Richards.
No, the other one. She had the hair. Kalina.
Oh, okay, yeah.
She said he called her 50 something times from...
No, that was Don. Kalina actually is the one was having his back in all of it.
Okay, so I'm
Don is testified. And basically, even, with her testimony, his lawyers tore her up.
Okay.
On the stand.
So, when you've got a history of that kind of behavior, as well as... just having that that podium, that pulpit to be able to cast or to render a sentence on someone, to send a message to everyone else, I think the judge may be willing to do that to make a point.
I mean, because he denied his bail.
Yes.
Which, some are saying for Diddy to get charged with the prostitution, that was getting a ticket, dealing with a prostitute on Harry Hines. Like it wasn't a big deal in some people's eyes, even though, yes, that is a big deal legally, but his bail was still denied.
Right.
So
for bail, the factors that the court typically will consider is whether or not you're a threat to the community, whether or not you're likely to reoffend, whether or not your appearance can be you can be trusted to appear for your court proceedings. But I want to circle back to something else that you just mentioned with respect to the charges and the bail being denied and then us ultimately having or getting this verdict. I believe that shortly after we did the last podcast, you and I believe it was maybe a week or so later, we started hearing that the prosecution was dropping their own charges mid-trial or late into trial.
Right.
That to me was a very glaring red flag, because
okay.
told me, as a litigator, that told me that there were some charges that they were not comfortable with in terms of evidence and having the support to get the verdict. They figured they would just narrow the issues because for the jury, because they did not want maybe this verdict with this charge to cost them a verdict on this charge.
Right.
Because a lot of those charges are interconnected.
Right.
Okay. So I think at some point, it was just a huddle. They had a quick huddle and decided, okay.
Do you remember what those charges?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't. And that's something, I think some of them were dealing with the racketeering aspect of it. But I don't remember exactly what the charges were.
Okay.
But the mere fact that they, decided to eliminate those charges, to me, was very telling.
This case cracked something open. So what message do you think the verdict will send to people with power in the industry?
Well, again, we are living in a time where celebrity is currency. And what I mean by that is everybody or a lot of people, we have a lot of people that are famous for being famous. That's it. That's all. They have no specific talent or, craft or anything. So with that, celebrity is just extremely, it carries a lot of weight. And with that weight, I believe that it leads to an air of feeling untouchable, feeling that you are above the law, whether or not you actually utter the words. You just feel. Case in point, he gave them $50,000 to get rid of the video, or to give him the video. Only celebrity can do things like that, or can get you into those kinds of arrangements. So I think from the standpoint of sending a message to other men or other people in that world, I don't know if it will necessarily stick. Because everyone thinks that they're different. They're better. They're above it.
Let me ask you this, and I know you're not a criminal attorney, but what could he have done different legally? Like, how would you have advised him as his attorney if you knew that he was doing some of these things, so that this would be prevented, so that there wouldn't be any lawsuits?
Well, the first thing I think that really did him in and put him on the radar for any sort of legal issues was the exchange of money.
Okay.
I think that's where he made his mistakes.
Okay.
If he would have just kept his money to himself, I don't know. He could have bought gifts. I don't know. But the actual currency of it all, I think, is what really kind of sent this over the edge.
Because it's a paper trail.
It's a paper trail. Currency and paying for sexual encounters, plane tickets across state lines, all of that. And then just from a celebrity standpoint, I think inviting people into your bedroom without trusting
would an NDA, if he had everyone sign NDA.
But even if he had everyone sign an NDA, that wouldn't have stopped Cassie from being able to talk about what she did or experienced in that relationship, right? She could have said, well, I don't know the sex worker's name and I can't get it because they signed an NDA, but I can tell you that sex worker and I did X, Y, and Z and Diddy watched.
But if the attorneys were not able to talk to that sex worker, because they did have some, but
they would have had text messages from Cassie talking about the sex workers. They had witnesses who arranged the sex workers, that set up the rooms for the sex workers, who arranged the travel. So there were other sources it may not have been as strong of a case. So I agree with you, but I'm just saying there were other ways to get, there would have been other ways rather to get.
I want to ask you this because this just popped in my head. So when you were here last and I asked you, so when Cassie, filed her lawsuit and she and Sean Combs settled, and she got the $20 million. I think
$30 million.
Well, she got $30 million, but it was $20 million from him and 10 from the Intercontinental.
Oh, okay, from the hotel.
Yeah, from the hotel.
But it was a cumulative. Yeah, $30 million.
So I asked you. I said, would she have filed her lawsuit based on the same evidence that they presented? You said possibly yes. So then, in that case, since he was not found guilty of the trafficking, the major charges, would she have won her case against him?
That's actually a really good question. So in the law, there is a concept known as collateral estoppel. And so with collateral estoppel, this would, from just an everyday standpoint, this would mean that, let's just say she had not settled her lawsuit. Let's just say her lawsuit was still pending this entire time this criminal trial was happening. Well, if he had been found guilty at the end of his criminal trial, let's just say he had been found guilty of all the charges that they initially made him stand trial for, then in the civil world, her case would have been done, paid, she's good to go, because the standard of proof, burden of proof is so different in both courts. In criminal court, it's beyond a reasonable doubt. In civil court, it's preponderance of the evidence, meaning it happened more likely than not. Mm-hmm. So if she would have gotten, or any victim would have received the criminal verdict first, or since they did, they received the criminal verdict first, and he was found not guilty on quite a few of those charges beyond a reasonable doubt. Now they, on the civil side, the ones whose lawsuits have not been settled, whose lawsuits are still pending, they have a higher burden now to show, because he's already been found not guilty in the court of law on certain charges, right?
Right.
So to your question, the fact that he settled with her so quickly, I think was a glaring sign that there was evidence out there that could hurt him criminally. And he figured he would go ahead, get rid of that, we talked about nuisance value last time, all of that good stuff. He would get rid of that, go face his criminal trial. And in all honesty, even though he's got work ahead of him, even if he came home today, he's got I think it's right at 60-something lawsuits right now.
Yeah.
He's still in a much better position from the civil case standpoint than the plaintiffs are now.
Right. So, and with that being said, can anybody at this point now go and file a civil suit against him?
Sure, anybody can go and file anything. It's a question of whether or not it's going anywhere.
Okay. Now, are lawsuits or investigations, not just with people in power in general, do you think that there are going to be more lawsuits and investigations that's going to happen?
To Diddy?
Well, to other celebrities.
Oh, to others. I'm sure. That's going to, I'm sure. Just in the last decade, we've had Jeffrey Epstein, we've had Harvey Weinstein, we've had R. Kelly, we've had Bill Cosby, we've had now Diddy. I don't think that. And
did we see Fat Joe, something with?
Right. Now, yeah. I haven't seen anything else about that, but do you have
I don't have anything, nothing that has just really stood out about that situation. Because I wonder, is some of this stuff frivolous? Are people just going to be coming out saying anything? Who knows?
Who knows? But, the courts generally have a remedy for frivolous lawsuits. So,
I will say that this case definitely is going to give courage to victims to come out, to speak out, if they were in situations with others like this. Now, what role will civil lawsuits play now that the criminal verdict has landed? We said that there are 60-something odd civil cases that have been filed against him. So, I mean, like, now what is the process for that going to be? Do you know how that will work now?
Well, no, I don't, because, I mean, if he settles he probably will settle quite a few of them, but some of them, I mean, he and his attorneys are going to need to sit down and really decide which ones are worth fighting and facing, and which ones need to just be,
No, I got to ask you
sure.
this. Since Cassie is now $30 million richer, could any of these lawsuits come her way as well?
That's actually a good question, but I doubt that, simply because,
Because
she's
I saw one of the sex workers saying that he got some type of sexual transmitted disease from her, and that, something. I just saw this like a couple of days ago. Now, how true or it is, I don't know, but
I have not heard that. I'll have
Okay.
to read up on that. That's actually interesting, because I do recall her discussing the sores in her mouth.
exactly.
And all
That's
of
what I'm
those
saying. Based on her
things.
own testimony of things she said that took place. So now, if one of these sex workers come in, he said, girl, like, he went through a whole list of stuff. He said, because of something that happened, like, basically there were a chain of events that happened for him health-wise that he attributes to the freak-offs with them. And he is naming both of them in his lawsuit.
Well, the thing about with respect to passing on an STD or suing for an STD, you would have to be able to make a showing that the other person knew or should have known that they actually had whatever it is that they passed on to you, and just chose to be, in essence, reckless. So he would have a little bit of work cut out for him to show that she knew at that time, or should have known at that time when she engaged in sexual relations with him, that she was positive for whatever the disease was.
So his name is Clayton Howard.
Okay.
He has made a number of wild claims, including accusations that she gave him an STD and aborted his child without consent. He said it was a very traumatic experience, and according to Howard, she continued to have sex with him unprotected, often drug-induced, and yeah.
Well, again, you're going to have, and I'm not discrediting or trying to discredit his story, but I will say that a lot of times in cases like this, you will have more people come forward, or you will also have people who will interject themselves into the scenario with falsehoods. And I'm not saying that this is that, but it's going to be a matter of credibility. Whose credibility, has the most weight.
For sure. Well, that is definitely going to be interesting to see, because, like I said, if these sex workers, and then another guy, I saw this on social media. It isn't Clayton Howard. It was like a video, like a TikTok. He did a TikTok video or whatever, but it's been going viral. So I don't know how accurate his statements are, but he said he was also a sex worker. And the reason why, his name is Dave. He said he was named in the testimony. His name is in the transcript of being one of the sex workers. And he said that this, because if you look at Dave now, you're like, no. But Dave said he don't care what he looks like. This was, 10 years ago, but This was true. And basically, he's saying the reason why he's suing Cassie, he said he's coming for her because she brought his name up in court, and that he felt like that was a part of his life that he did not want to be relived.
Well, newsflash, Dave. You cannot sue someone for providing testimony under oath in court if they said you're like, that's not how that
he
works.
can't. Oh well, Dave. I tried.
So I don't know if that's the case. A lot of people would be suing, and no. I don't see that going anywhere. But hey, if it does, I will be glad to come back and talk about it because that will be new for me. I gotta go Google that. I definitely gotta go Google that.
So, what are your final thoughts? Before we hear the sentencing, what are your final thoughts for the?
I just hope and pray that when it's all said and done, that justice is served and that the actual victims receive the accountability that they're looking for, and that, redemption is one of those things where, you have to kind of play that by ear. I don't want you to be redeemed more than you want to redeem yourself. So it'll be interesting to see how Puffy or Diddy, again, I'm showing my age by calling him Puffy, but it'll be interesting to see how Diddy actually navigates his second chance at life, because that's what it'll be. I don't know financially if he'll ever be able to rebound from this. I'm curious.
You don't think so?
I don't know how. I mean, what can he sell? Music, okay, possibly. But the liquor, what else was the clothing? I don't know. I could be wrong. But I don't know. We're not the most forgiving society, but at the same time, we love a good comeback story. So I'm
trying to think, have we ever seen anything like that where a situation, because even with OJ, he was
never the same again.
Yeah, never. If you're listening, like you know a comeback story with a celebrity that was similar to this, you have to drop that in the comments.
Yeah, I'm thinking though. I feel like there's someone we're overlooking. I feel like there's somebody who we're like, wow, they really did that. But I don't know who that could be. But I feel like it's somebody that I'm not thinking about. But yeah, I mean, America loves a good comeback story. I mean, look at the president. He lost he got 39 felonies he was convicted of. They put him right back in office. So that's just the country, culture that we're in. But it will be interesting to see how this all unfolds. I can honestly say that I don't think he ever saw this coming. I don't think if you asked him 15 years ago if he thought this would be his life right now, I don't think he did.
No, not at all.
But he's still young in the sense of, what is he, like 55, 50?
50, I don't know.
He's somewhere in there. So I don't know, Montana. I really don't know. I'm curious to see how it all turns out for him, but it was getting real hot
he's
for him.
55.
55. Okay, I figured as much. So could he make a comeback? I don't know. I don't know. What do you think? I mean, you're in the PR world. What do you think? What would it take?
Ew. Heather, I don't know, but I will tell you, I am one that believes in second chances. Like, I want people to, I want you to have a second chance. I want you to learn the error of your ways. Like, I was a little disappointed, I'm not going to lie, when it came out that when he was arrested, that he still had stuff in his hotel or could have been possibly planning to do something. I was a little feeling a way about that because it's like, man, you're not learning your lesson. Like, at least show, once the investigation started, once they raided his house, all activity should have stopped. Like, all of that really should have stopped. So I, at that point, I'm like, well, was he really, like, are you really, like, learning your lesson if you had this stuff in your hotel at the time of your arrest? That didn't look good, in my opinion, for him. But I would like to see him do something. And I feel like with him, with the amount of money that he has, heck, he can start his own liquor. I mean, he could do his own, independent thing that doesn't where he doesn't have to have a backing of a big company. He still has a lot of money.
Yes, I agree with all of that. The only thing I would say though is having money and being able to make money.
Well, and he has kids, so now we might not mess with Diddy, but one of the kids,
Potentially, I could see that.
And that could,
Yeah, because honestly, I haven't seen, and I'm grateful for this, but I have not seen any, negative comments about the girls or the boy, and that's good. Mm-hmm. If we can keep, because they have nothing to do with this, regardless of which side you're on.
Which I hope they're paying attention to what's happening to their father.
For sure, right? But at the same time, I just wanted to be crystal clear that these are kids. Like, they had zero
to do
with that. And so I'm glad that the public is not, trying to tear them down because of their the actions or alleged actions of their father. But, it will still be interesting to see how they're able to navigate.
I just think Diddy's going to be doing some silent behind the scenes. We might not know it's Diddy.
Potentially.
But he's definitely going to be having his hands in pots. I even read somewhere they said while he's been in prison, his jet has been making money. Like, his jet has made over $4 million.
Like leasing it to others.
Leasing it and whatnot. That may not be a lot of money to him. I mean, because based on, his expense report, but that's a lot of money. I mean, like $4 million.
Well, that will certainly help with his legal fees.
Yeah.
If nothing else, because that's where a bulk of his money is being spent. That's.
What would you estimate a case like this is costing him?
I'm thinking, how many attorneys did he have? Was it about 6?
Some big ones.
It was
too.
Yeah. So I mean, and they've got their own staff, their own offices, their own hourly rates. I mean, it's definitely in the millions. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt.
Yeah. Well, you guys, this case is big, not just for the headlines, but for what it represents. And Heather, thank you again for bringing the clarity. Now, where can people find you if they want real legal insight minus the TikTok drama?
Minus the TikTok drama. They can follow me on Instagram at HNicoleLaw, or you can also follow me on She Got Him Custody on Instagram as well.
All right. Now, if you want more unfiltered, intelligent conversations like this, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can drop your thoughts in the comments and stay tapped into the after party, because around here we don't just talk about it, we break it all the way down. Thank you for tuning in, and see you next time.